Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we're talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season premiere of Wynonna Earp as well as the season premiere of Outcast. Like always, if I'm talking about something you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include a time when I start talking about each of the respective shows. So, for example, if you want to hear what I had to say about the season premiere of Wynonna Earp, you can skip to what I had to say about the season premiere of Outcast. But the first thing I'm going to talk about is the season premiere of Wynonna Earp, a great season premiere. Basically, time frame wise, it's been about 19 months since season 2's finale, and that whole situation, it's kind of neat because at the very beginning, everything was meant to be kind of like, oh, we're going to draw these Revenant out because it's like, oh, we need to find out where the hell Bullshark is, because apparently this entire time he's been super quiet and hasn't really done anything or made any moves. So but it's kind of neat because he had the entire team there. Like, Wynonna's pretending to be drunk. I love Jeremy popping up trying to help, but it's actually Doc that comes through in the end. Also, you can't help but notice Jeremy's got literally the same facial hair as Doc, and I love that none of us are acknowledging or even saying anything about it. Just kind of like, yeah, that's a thing, just leave it at that. Dolls has facial hair too. Like, I mean, I think I'm blanking. I'm literally just rewatched season 2, but it's like he's got just the mustache thing going on. I was like, that's kind of an interesting situation because he was he? I don't think he was completely clean shaven. He was like more beard, wasn't he? Maybe in the first season he was more clean shaven, but definitely in season 2 his like bearded mustache. But nevertheless, it's like this season's just the mustache. Beside the point. I love the whole like, don't matter, we run the Ghost River Triangle, and she almost trips, and she's just like, damn it, stupid Pussy Willow. Which, side note, isn't that the same bar she went to last season? Because it's like, oh, I hope we thought we'd never come back here again. That's the same bar she went to last season with the whole Jonas thing, wasn't it? I could have sworn that's the same one. I mean, it's like where she was Aphrodite's and stuff like that, but nevertheless. So things aren't a little 100% right for everybody because obviously Wynonna and Doc are dealing with the whole Alice situation in their own way. Obviously, like, because Wynonna's like, Doc won't even talk to me unless, like, he won't touch me unless we're training, and he won't talk to me unless he's pissed. Because for him, it's like, yeah, because Wynonna's getting in shape. It's almost like, oh, that, all that baby weight's going. And it's like, for him, it almost hurts this because for him, it's like, yeah, because it's almost like, there's no signs of her. They don't have their daughter anymore. And so it's almost like that was like the last proof that she ever existed. So you even have all the freaking revenants running their mouths being like, oh yeah, we heard that your baby died. That, oh yeah, all it took to break the air was a pregnancy and whatever. And it's just like, I'm not pregnant anymore, and proceed to kick their asses. So, which this season premiere still confuses me on where Wynonna stands with everyone, like in particular Dolls and Doc. Cause like she kisses Dolls on the cheek, but it's like later on she kind of makes out with Doc, which is like, it's that complicated thing. It's like, well, obviously there's feelings there, but obviously, and there's even a moment where Dolls tries to talk about it. He's like, Earp, Wynonna, and just nothing happens because I think there's still that awkwardness there because I guess it's like, yeah, her and Doc had that connection of being parents to this kid, that like that's the whole thing, and I think maybe Dolls is afraid of taking those steps forward. I mean, he tried to take those steps last season. They didn't really go anywhere because he kind of backpedaled a little bit, but it seemed like, oh, maybe because the fact that she kissed him on the cheek, maybe go like, oh, maybe, oh no, I guess that was just kind of for having her back and everything, but still, it just kind of floats in your mind like, oh, that's kind of sad that, and then on top of all of that, it's kind of interesting because I don't think it ever came up in the season finale, but like they bring it up, Nicole and Waverly is kind of like, oh yeah, like, oh yeah, the whole her being married thing, which obviously at the end of season 2 she got divorced. But it's also like came up the whole like her making out with Rosita. I was like, ah, wow. I mean, I guess it's kind of like we're in a relationship. Let's be open and honest with each other. So it's like I just wasn't expecting you to say anything. It was kind of like well, I mean, still I think that shows that she didn't hide it. That she kind of admitted everything. It's kind of like I mean, they were kind of in a bad spot at the time, but nevertheless, And lo and behold, you have freaking vampires coming into purgatory, which is interesting. And I love how everyone just jumps on it immediately. Like, even, I guess because he got swept up in everything, but Nedley being like, oh yeah, vampires. Poor Lonnie ended up getting killed. Wasn't this literally the second time Lonnie's ever popped up? I don't remember him from season 1. The only episode he popped up in season 2 was like the alternate reality where like Wynonna was wished away. Like I think that's the only time he's ever popped up, because like Nicole's like the only other deputy you've ever seen, and it's like, oh, we brought him back just to kill him. It's like, do let me know if he popped up in season 1. Like I said, I haven't rewatched season 1 since like last year when season 2 aired. That was the last time I went back and rewatched season 1, but I don't really remember any focuses on any other deputies besides Nicole, you know? So, poor bastard. And I do like that they systematically go through everyone, like Petra's going through everybody and they're kind of splitting up. This the whole like sexy fall thing they have, which is kind of interesting. And then like they persuade people with kind of their compulsion, which is kind of interesting how it works. It's just like they slide their hands across your face or just like get all up in your face. It also seems like it doesn't have to be direct contact too, because like Nicole was in the stall and it affected her too, so that's kind of interesting. But it seems like the only 2 people it didn't work on, technically 3, but Doc's situation is his own, which I'll get to in a second. But it seems like it didn't work on Wynonna. Is it because she's just an Earp in general? Like, do they have a little bit more resist? I mean, I don't know. You would assume it has to be Peacemaker. Peacemaker has in the past kind of shown to kind of kick in when she needs to snap out of something. Like, it just naturally kind of acts as a repellent. But I mean, but at any other point in time, because she was separated from it, so like at any point in time, well, I guess there was no time for any vampires to kind of try and charm her, I guess, at that point. But I was so sure Dawes was under effect. Even when he showed up, I'm like, now he's secretly under effect. It's gonna be a twist or something. It's like, no, I guess like being whatever he is, the whole dragon thing kind of makes him immune too. So I guess like as long as you're something else, you can't be affected potentially. At least that's what I'm assuming. I don't know. Like I said, maybe there is some kind of special resistance to the Earp blood. I mean, you can be susceptible to certain things, but maybe something like that isn't completely effective on you. Or like I said, you know, because they were like, oh, did Peacemaker do it? You just make the assumption, but who knows whether that's 100% the case or not. Poor vampires got wiped out bit by bit. I love even Jeremy being like, no, no, I like, though he kind of actually had, like, that one particularly liked me. I also love that the charm wore off. There was that cool moment of like one vampire went over and charmed Nicole again, and then like Waverly comes through, it's like, that's my girlfriend, and kills the vampire, and then just like Nicole kind of snaps back and she says, hey, yeah, that's right. And it's just like that cute moment, and you're just going around. I was like, wow, vampires are kind of punks in this universe, because it's like you didn't put up much of a fight, you all pretty much got dusted pretty easily. It's like, oh, I thought you were supposed, I don't know, I mean, maybe it's just because of the whole like, oh, they were more pop than, you know, vampires in a sense of they're vampires, but they weren't like crazy powerful vampires. Like all they had was their charm, because it seemed like nothing else worked. It's also kind of interesting because it turns out like what this is all about is because everyone, it seems probably like every supernatural creature probably out there in the world is probably making their way to purgatory, because it's like, yo, Bullshar is back. It's like, yo, we got to celebrate him. It's just kind of like all kind of show up and show their allegiance. That was kind of an interesting thing too. I thought it was kind of interesting. Like they're dividing people up into two. Well, there's the old and the new. The old get to stay and potentially get turned, while the young get eaten. But there's also VIPs, who are people who are direct descendants of people from purgatory. Like they've had long running like families from purgatory, like all those who are related to families that have existed in purgatory since what went down with Clutie and Wyatt. Like, I think Nedley kind of fell in that category himself. So that was just kind of an interesting thing, because it's like, oh, you're supposed to be present. It's like, oh, here are the descendants of all the people that were there when you ruled, and then like Wyatt put you down, like, you know. So now kind of circling back to Doc's situation, which is very interesting, because it's like, oh, that one vampire made such an interest. And I was like, I thought that was kind of interesting, because it didn't seem like anyone else, like, because Doc never came up in any of the conversation, because no one else was like, oh, what about Doc? It's like, no. So it seemed like Doc was kind of taken out of the situation in particular, because it seems like the woman in particular, I think her name was Contessa. Like, it seems her and Doc like such an interest in him. I'm like, oh yeah, here's Doc, and it's like, oh, see whether you're worthy or not to join our ranks. Because it seemed like she was going to torture him to see who he was, but the fact that she thought he was like kind of the weak person or whatever. So it's just kind of like, it's interesting. Like that must be an old flame, because she was kind of pissed at him the moment he said her name, and she's kind of like, you're still kind of an asshole even after all of this. So what that history is exactly, I don't know. He does let her go in the end. I mean, he did fire a shot towards her, but which kind of makes me wonder, is like, is that supposed to be hinting at the fact that, well, she's not dead, so she could easily kind of circle back in some shape or form, because she talks about the fact that she came all this way for him. I wonder, well, because the fact is, she must be further from his past, because she doesn't know. I mean, I guess most people don't know about Doc's situation, about the whole him being immortal and stuff like that. She just thinks it's, oh, him coming back from the dead in some shape or form. She had no idea probably about the whole, like, him being immortal and trapped in a well for, like, a good chunk of time, you know, that whole situation, so. in the inner circle, tend to know about that. I mean, most likely revenants know that too, but nevertheless. But I'm curious to see if that circles back around and ends up being a situation of like, oh yeah, we have like, the whole situation between him and Wynonna, and now him and Contessa, and then like the whole doll situation, like whether that kind of turns into a complicated love thing this season or not. Maybe it won't be. Maybe we won't see more of her. I'd assume she lived and got away. We will, but like I said, we'll see. It's actually kind of interesting because there was a part of me that was kind of going off in the back of my mind. I was wondering, like, would he take that offer? Considering the fact is that, also, why would they out in the sun? Maybe because it's purgatory and it's Ghost River Triangle, so things work differently. Maybe, I mean, who knows? Maybe vampires work a little differently in this universe. Because it's like, yeah, they were kind of out and about. But I was just thinking about it because there's a whole immortality situation. I mean, him being a former immortal, at the very least, he could die, but he just couldn't age. But now he can age like any other human, being 100% mortal. So I'm curious if that's going to come back up, because that's also dealing with something else that came up in this. Like, Doc has not told anyone what he experienced last season. The whole like, oh yeah, going to hell situation. It seems like it's not just the Alice thing. The Alice thing kind of bothers him, like, just like never, like, having lost his daughter just as soon as she's born. That, but on top of the fact is he knows that when he dies, he's going to go to hell. But the fact is, if she can make him a vampire, he doesn't have to worry about that. So I'm curious, like, what his reluctancy would be to it. I love that whole thing, too, about him being like, I'm like the fastest gun around, or whatever. I'm the greatest gunsman around, and I'm not going to die, like, handcuffed to a stripper pole. At least I hope not. But it makes me wonder if that's going to, what I was bringing up just then, like whether that's going to circle back around and become that situation, because he'll be so scared of going to hell that he won't tell anyone. So we'll see in the end. What I find fascinating too is also we find out that Wynonna has not told anybody about her mom's situation. I kind of figured as much. It's like, so that's, and I was thinking like, she's known for a while. Where I was thinking like, oh, she's known for a while, but she hasn't told Waverly. It's like, no, she's known for a very long time. It's because their dad expressly told her, and probably told her and Willa not to say anything about like, oh yeah, what your mom's like, their mom's situation is, just tell her that mom ran away. I guess because it's like, oh, their mom's kind of quote unquote crazy, because we end up finding out that she's locked up in jail and she hears these voices and stuff like that. Then, because that begs the question, like, who did she meet at the end of season 2 then? Did her mom just kind of escape temporarily? And that was Wynonna. She had went to the police, going to the prison to find her mom, but it's like, oh, your mom escaped, and she tracked down her mom and ended up finding her there. Is that what that was about? Or is that something else entirely? Like, what's up with that? Because like I said, that wasn't the prison she met her at in the season 2 finale, so it's like, what's up with that? One person who probably needs it the most about this whole, like, your mom situation, just because it's like her not being an Earp and everything, which kind of puts her and her mom in kind of in a commonality, because at least, in Willa and Wynonna's case, at the very least, they're half Earp. So they still got the Earp blood running through their veins, but it's like, she doesn't, Waverly doesn't, neither does, her mom, so... Which is what Wynonna kind of brought up too. Is like, why do you know so much about this? What is your connection to him? Because the moment, like, there was that guy who's kind of a servant of Bolshar, who kind of like left a bloody print on the wall. So it's like, what the hell is that about? Then, what is the connection? It's like she's got these voices in her head that tells her something. So it's like, because part of me is wondering, is that going to be like, the fact that she could hear voices and stuff like that makes me kind of go like, okay, is that something like on the Gibson side of the family or something? Like, what is that? Or is her mom just like, it can't just be like, oh, she's crazy. It's got to be more to it for her to like know the name Bolshar and stuff like that. A name that no one really knew, because everyone just kind of referred to him as Clootie, which is like, why is that though? Why the whole Clootie thing? Like, who were you beforehand that you had to change your name Clootie? Like, is there something more to this? Like, kind of like, because there's a lot of angles to this whole situation. Well, let me finish up what I was thinking before, because it's like, maybe there's something on the Gibson side of the family that like kind of gives them something a little special that makes them different too. Maybe it's kind of like a shaman thing or something for them to be able to tap into what they did. Because we never actually found it out, but Wynonna looking at the files, like the fact is why her mom is in jail in the first place. Her mom's been here for like, wasn't it like 8 years or something like that? It's like, we don't know why that is. But the point I was going to make too was like, because we get introduced to the cult of Bolshar, which is interesting. Another secret being kept. Literally, you said in season two's finale, no more secrets. And what are we doing? We come back 19 weeks later and we're still keeping secrets. Everyone is, which is interesting to me. But it's like, this cult has existed even before Bulshar was born, even before Clootie was even like taken down. So it's like they've been operating the entire time he's been out. So it's like, what is that all about? Like their followers and stuff like that. But is this Bulshar thing a lot more? Like, is he kind of like a demon that gets resurrected? It kind of seemed like one of the vampires would seem like they might have been implying that about him, but maybe that's not the case. For follow someone who's just been in the ground for like 130 years. Like, I don't get why you would, serve under someone like that. That's what I'm trying to understand. So I can only assume it's a situation like that, that it might be like, it's this particular evil that resurrects, but then why resurrect Clootie in particular? Like I said, I'm just curious, what's the difference between Clootie and Bulshar? Like, maybe it's something that kind of runs in his family in particular, maybe he comes from a long line of demons or something, and his case was kind of special. I mean, to be fair, he was like the one dude that because they called him like the demon Clootie even back then. So he was the one dude that Wyatt couldn't put down. Like, he put down everyone else, obviously, but he could never completely put him down. So the question is, like, obviously for him to cast a curse and everything, he had to have some kind of powers too. I mean, let's not forget about Constance's like kids. They were because they were already something else entirely too. So it's not like Clootie was human to begin with, but maybe he kept himself hidden for whatever reason, Maybe there's something even worse than an Earp that he's worried about. Maybe this goes beyond them. I mean, because Wyatt's like the first one to kind of do some damage to him, but beyond that, like, someone has had to have crossed paths with him, and maybe that's what the Gibsons have something to do. Like, whereas the Earps kind of deal with this whole Revenant thing and Clootie, maybe the Gibsons have an even deeper past and tie to him. Maybe they're connected in some shape or form, Because this season, hopefully we find out more about Waverly, too, because for her, that's something she's still trying to figure out. She's trying to keep her stuff together because she's like, everyone else is kind of dealing with their own thing, and she's kind of like, oh, this isn't about you. So she's trying to put her stuff about herself aside, which is definitely going to be interesting now that Wynonna doesn't tell her directly, but she's going to go take her to see their mom. Which I'm sure she's not going to appreciate the fact that you've been keeping this a secret for so long, but to be fair, your dad told you to do it. I wonder had she visited her mom before now. I mean, I don't know. Because it's only now that her mom is like, I don't want my daughter to visit me anymore. I mean, I assume maybe that kind of applies to both of them, but we'll see. But what's interesting is when at the end, they end up crashing and someone drags Waverly away while leaving Wynonna there. So it's like, what's that about? Then there's also the thing with Nicole, because the fact is Nicole started like having her panic attack when she saw a symbol engraved on someone's back during the whole like massacre situation. And it's like, oh, what's up with that? Like, why is that happening? And for her, it's like, she thinks she's a survivor of a previous massacre. And it's like, what? What's this all about? So does she have a similar? Well, no, because I feel like Waverly would have noticed something like that, but it's like, maybe it's something familiar to her. Like either her memories maybe she's just remembering this, or maybe it's something that, she's always remembered, but she didn't realize it was a piece to a greater puzzle. Maybe seeing that symbol on someone's back made her realize, like, wait, she's seen this before. In what way and shape or form? I don't know. How would she be a survivor of it? Because her parents are still alive. I mean, granted, she doesn't talk to them because that came up last season, but it's like, how would you, like, what's up with that? Like, that. Because, that's interesting. I mean, we don't really know that much about Nicole, but I'm very curious to see what that is. I mean, it's kind of interesting because it is something, like, only between Dolls and Nicole that they've been looking into, like, over the course of this period of time. So it's like, I'm just curious to see what that ends up being about. Like I said, the great premiere is already setting up so much stuff. I'm so curious to see how this plays out, especially because we got to see Bulshar. It seems like it was him and his, I guess, I've been in the ground for so long. Also, let's not forget, like, I wonder, did he get his arm reattached? Because fake Widow Mercedes ended up cutting his arm off. Also, that's another thing too. Whatever happened to Mercedes? Last time we saw her, she was in a hospital. So I don't know if anything ever happened about that. Last time we saw, like, his arm got cut off. But also, it's like, oh, there's more than one way to serve Bulshar and, like, put, like, some kind of seed in a vampire dude's mouth. So it's like, is that kind of like how he, like, connects with people, kind of like one hive mind type of thing or something? Or is that just like, I mean, I guess we'll have to wait and see that kind of turn over into something else. I'm curious, like, what's Bulshar like towards the Revenants anyway? Like, I'm wondering, does he treat them kind of like if you're familiar with the show Supernatural, how Lucifer treats demons? Like, it's like kind of, you're kind of the one that created us, but we're kind of scum to you. Like, I'm wondering, is it like that, or what happens? Like, there's a guy that's standing behind him that's kind of like his right hand man. Like, what that's all. I'm so curious to find out so much more about him, like where he came from, what he's all about, what this whole cult about. So many secrets about Wynonna's mom and Waverly. I'm so very interested to see where all like this entire season takes us. And so I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us. And now moving on to the season premiere of Outcast, a great season premiere. Obviously, this is for people in the U.S. If you're coming across this and you live outside the U.S., you're probably like, wait, what? Well, we're just getting it now in the U.S. The season just started today at the time of recording this. So obviously, outside of the US, it went international like last year, and we're just only getting it now like over a year late. But nevertheless, I've already talked about this in ad nauseum. I'm sure I'm misusing that word because I don't even think I really know what it means. But nevertheless, moving on into the episode, a lot of interesting things. Like, it seems like we're picking up right where season 1 left off. It's kind of interesting because the sheriff kind of brings it up. It seems like Kyle healed I guess it would make sense, but all those people that were there being held by the fire chief and his wife, like all those people, like he healed all of them, well, quote unquote, healed all of them before leaving. It's kind of interesting because he kind of puts in a different perspective. I thought it was kind of interesting. It's like the fact of the matter is these 8 people disappeared, no missing records, nothing popped up about them, which could also be implied, well, the fact is that nothing came up must mean like they looked like across the U.S. because a lot of these people are I'd assume a lot of them are from Rome. I feel like you'd be able to get so many so I doubt they're like outsiders, so they have to be people from Rome, but it's like nobody said anything about them being missing. And after Kyle did his thing, it's just like the world swallowed them whole. It's just kind of like, and yeah, it's almost like none of that happened, nothing that really, they just kind of disappeared into the world, which is almost a sad thing, just because it's like no one really noticed you were missing, and then when it goes back, it's almost like your life doesn't, like, I'm not sure that's what he was implying, but it's almost like your life doesn't matter enough for it to kind of be a big impact. It is kind of sad. It just kind of feels like you're kind of lost and forgotten, like even when you're healed up and everything, like you don't really have much to go back to in a sense. Like I said, maybe that's just my way of interpreting, which is super pessimistic and negative to kind of look at it like that, but nevertheless. He came back to Rome because, like, there's literally nowhere else to go, because it's like, well, as we know with season 1 ending, it's like, oh yeah, like, they literally found us. He even says, like, we're 2 states away. They still managed to find us. So it's like, there's no escaping this. But so he came back because it's like, he needs to make sure that everything is okay. The whole point of leaving was to make sure that Amber would be okay. But it's like, nope, that's, because I was curious about that, the way season 1 ended too. I was like, oh, or would they be potentially going somewhere else? But it's like, nope, they circle back to Rome. It seems like Rome is going to be the epicenter. It's kind of where it all started for Kyle anyway, so. It's kind of interesting because he met up with the Rev, and the Rev's literally standing outside of Sydney's place. So that must mean it literally has been like a day or two. Like whatever time he literally took to get there and drive back, it's been that amount of time. It has not been a long period of time, which I think is fascinating. I always like time skips where it's just kind of like, oh no, it literally picks up right where the previous season left off. Sometimes it's minutes, sometimes it's like day or so, but you get what I'm trying to say. I was actually shocked that the Rev was like, yeah, I burned this place. And I was like, we know that potentially Aaron was in there, because you would also, by admitting that to Kyle, you're admitting that you potentially killed him. So it's like, why would you say that? But it's like, I guess he wasn't 100% sure, but then he saw Aaron's helmet. Like, after meeting Patrice at the end of season 1's finale, like, he had an idea that it was Aaron, but he wasn't 100% sure. But now I think seeing that kind of cemented in his mind, it's like, yeah, especially because he wanted to go tell Patricia, but like, he couldn't, because it's like, for her, she's beating herself up because she's like, oh, like I try to fill the hole in my heart and not be so lonely with all these different men, and I wasn't there for my son. He called me a whore and stuff like that, and it's just kind of like, oh, dude. And she's beating herself up about, and you have Anderson being there, like, feeling like, he's like, I'm such a, like, she's beating herself up about it, but it's my fault and everything. And she's like, will you help me look for him? He's like, of course. I'm like, you gotta feel extra shitty about that. Not only did you potentially kill her son, you're up here helping her look for the son where you know exactly where he is. It's kind of like, man, that's an extra dick move to you. Also, that one of his deputies, Nunez, Isn't that the same actress who plays Piper in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? And she's also in The Walking Dead. She's from Oceanside. She's one of the ladies from Oceanside, I'm pretty sure. Which is interesting. I mean, let's not forget, like, you know, Walking Dead's Image Comics. This is also Image Comics, but also her being in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. She's also, like, in Marvel. So it's kind of interesting like that in my head. You know who else popped up in this episode? Freaking Hoon Lee. If you don't know, freaking Job from Banshee. I saw his name in it, but I was like, he just played a doctor, so I don't know if he's going to pop up more. I hope he does, because I'm like, dude. Like I said, if you don't know, like, when it comes to, like, Banshee's fantastic series, if you haven't seen it, also, you know, another Cinemax series, but also on top of that, it's like, the fact of the matter is, like, Job was, like, hands down one of my favorite characters on that show. He's so good. Nevertheless, I'm spiraling all over the place, so I do apologize. Now the whole point is trying to track down Sydney, because, like, well, we need to find Sydney because he's the only key to ending all of this, you know, like, he's the only one that has all these answers and stuff, because, you know, Kyle still knows nothing about his situation, like, what he is being the outcast, what that actually means and everything, you know, so, I don't know, we'll kind of have to, you know, he's slowly piecing this all together. Looks like, you know, Rose, the sheriff's wife, it seems like she's in the know now about everything. Because she's looking after Megan and Holly, which that situation is sad because you see that Megan's kind of like distraught. Because like the way season 1 finale played out, I wasn't 100% sure if they really explained to her what happened. Because he kept being like, oh, do you remember? So she probably doesn't remember, but she has to have some idea, like, because it didn't seem like they outright explained it to her, but maybe they did, and maybe she just remembered. Maybe because it was such a fresh possession that it was clearer in her. I mean, let's not forget, like, Allison didn't remember, you know, for quite a while, and a lot of that kind of got blocked. So for Megan, it probably applies the same way too. It's even sadder because you have Holly, like, blaming, because you can tell, like, she had some, like, contempt for Amber, but she didn't really show it in season 1's finale. So maybe it's more like, given this time frame, like, maybe she's overheard conversations, because in her mind it's like it's their fault. It's like, none of this happened until you and your dad came. Y'all made my mom sick. Because let's not forget, like, she knows that their family had a similar situation with Allison, so it's kind of like, yeah, like, what's the commonality between the situations? It's you and your dad and my family in this sense. So she probably blames them for what happened to her mom and what happened to her dad, and it's just kind of like, which, you know, Kyle automatically takes the blame all for it anyway, because it's like, now, like, that's even, you know, cements it even more, just because it's like, yeah, his family just keeps getting hurt because of him, and now not just him, Amber too. And it's like, Kyle was on a fortunate side to a certain degree, because it's like, well, as an adult, he's having to deal with this. But I mean, in retrospect, it's like, still all that was happening while he was younger anyway. But then with Amber, it's like, she's at such a young age that, like, she probably will take it to heart too. It's like being blamed for what happened to her aunt and her, you know, what happened to her uncle and her cousin's life kind of being turned upside down like that, which is, it's just a shame. But like I said, it's just like, it's hard to say whether Holly's just saying that just because of the commonality, or whether she overheard the situation and understands what went down, and it's like, oh yeah, that's all your fault, you know. So, and you see it just really hits Amber. She doesn't really say much to anyone about it. I think she's just kind of like Kyle, and she just kind of shouldering the blame, kind of like how Kyle handled the Allison situation. I think she's probably going to handle it like that. But then you also had like the Megan situation. They want to like make it so it's like, oh, Mark committed suicide, but Megan's like, you're not going to besmirch his name and make it seem like, oh, he just like abandoned his family. It's like, no, it's not going to work like that, you know. So I'm curious to see what happens in the long run. What are they going to do about that? Because Megan's so adamant about this. But because you even had Amber kind of talking to her, being like, yeah, you're kind of like a puppet because of that black thing. That wasn't you that hurt, you know, Mark, you know. So because she still blames herself. So like I said, it's 100%. I'm curious to see like what she remembers, because it hasn't, like I said, it hasn't been that long too. So like obviously, once again, it's not like it's been a couple months or anything. It's been like maybe a day or two. So like it's super fresh, you know, in Megan. So it's no wonder she's still kind of like out of it and kind of just kind of alone like that. I'm curious to see what that means, because you see her looking at Amber and Kyle, and I wonder, does she feel the same way as Holly does, that on some level she blames them for this all happening? I'm curious. Or is it just her being like, oh, looking at them happy, and it's just kind of, I mean, because she might also blame herself in a sense of, it's like, I brought Kyle out. If I had just left him where it was, maybe none of this would have happened. I mean, it would have happened anyway. I mean, because we kind of see a little bit at the beginning where it's like we have his mom picking up some stuff, which it seems like this season might deal with his dad, because his dad never came up, not I think once in season 1, and now like obviously he's there driving the car with him and his mom in it. So, and the lady that was near them got possessed at the same time. But interestingly enough, you see this lady kind of sitting in the place as well and just looking at it all happening. So it's kind of like, okay. So there's been some people connected to this situation that have been chilling for a while. It's like, it makes you wonder why some haven't acted upon this now, because it seemed like his mom was like the first instance of this whole possession thing happening. And it seems like, I mean, at least what's been set up so far, it seems like that's kind of all throughout it. Like, it's been quiet most of his life until the Allison thing happened. It was kind of like, you know, oh my God, the thing with my mom is repeating. But it's like beyond that, they haven't really shown. I mean, obviously he was paranoid and scared, like, but still, it wasn't, you know, clear. It hasn't at least been brought up directly like, oh yeah, there's stuff like that happened all the time. Like I said, he was probably just paranoid and scared his entire life, you know, so. Handling the whole situation of like, man, you know, kind of being cast out as a reverend, plus dealing with the whole Aaron situation, and just kind of feeling like he's lost his way, because he thought for so long he was fighting this good fight, but now he just realizes like he was kind of full of shit. He was just so caught up in everything, and he just played right into everybody's hands and everything. You even have the sheriff trying to get like curfews running, as well as, you know, get the mayor to kind of dish out more money to kind of protect the town and stuff like that, but the mayor doesn't, because the sheriff can't really explain all of this. For one, if you go around talking about possessions by these creatures and stuff like that, no one's going to believe you. Everyone's just going to think you're crazy. Like everyone already thinks Anderson's crazy. They already think Kyle's crazy. So there's no like real way to kind of get that around. And even if you did, it caused mass panic, and it just create more problems. So like it sucks to being one of the few people that's in the know, and it's like, how do you properly do your job of protecting this town when you can't do your job, you know, because like not everyone knows the truth, you know. I mean, also at the same time, if you don't have Kyle or Amber, you don't know who or what's what, because they blend in so naturally with humans. Like obviously there would be some quirks at the beginning, like the guy he was chasing, which is like the dude was climbing over a fence and like ripped his arms to crap over the barbed wiring and still kept going. We find out that the fire chief is back in town. Apparently Sydney and his wife left, so. Because that is the thing, too, because Kyle was asking, like, why did you work with them? It's not like you're one of them, but for him, it's like, no matter what she became, she was still his wife. She was kind of his wife, but better. It's kind of like, oh, yeah, this little bit of something else mixed in with his wife. It's still like who she was to the core, but mixed in with something else. So this kind of unification, he was just kind of like, oh, yeah, it felt well. And, you know, for him, he's talking about Kyle's not going to be ready for what's coming next. And he he shoots himself. He gives Kyle the name. I don't know whether like the fire chief is dead, or whether like Kyle was able to call an ambulance in time, because obviously Kyle was able to move the gun enough. It still hit him, but I don't know if it was like fatal, but he was still bleeding. So I don't know. Like it never seemed like anyone went over to the fire chief's place. Like I feel like if that was the case, like we would have seen like the sheriff showing up there, but maybe that's something that kind of happens off screen, but nevertheless. So it ends up going back to Joshua's house. It turns out both of his parents are infected, and they're kind of telling him, and Sydney's also telling him, what Kyle did to him was bad. But I think, you know, on some level, Joshua's like, no, you did the right thing. You helped me. And it's like, and Kyle's promising to do the same thing for his parents. But he tries it on his mom, and it doesn't work because it's been too long. Can't do anything for that. And then the dad, I think I've let it slip my mind how stupidly strong they are. Because there are some instances where they've kind of shown like regular strength, but then I kind of forget the whole situation with Joshua in the beginning. It's like, oh yeah, he was tossing Kyle and Anders around like they're nothing. But maybe that's also because he is a kid, so it wasn't as crazy as it is with his dad, because his dad like treated Kyle like he was a rag doll. But it also seems like, and it's something that, you know, when it's all said and done, Joshua's mom says, when the unification is complete, there is no removing it. Like the guy from Blake from last season, I don't know if he's a good example or not, because what happened to him didn't seem like it necessarily happened to Joshua's dad, because in his case it looked like whatever it was still might be kind of bubbling to the surface. In this case with Joshua's dad, it didn't seem like it was getting all veiny and hurt, but it didn't seem like it was bubbling to the surface necessarily like with Blake. But maybe that's just me kind of like, they're probably exactly the same situation, because Blake prior to this is the only instance they've come across where it's like it's way too late, you know. Before the others, it's been like in that middle ground between just the right amount of time, or it's still too late, but not too far late, but late enough that when you rip it out, you rip out a piece of them because they've become so entangled. But now that we see that there is the final stage of once they become so entangled, there is no going back. Like before all this, he's sending them back to their world, which we still don't know why they're running from their world. But whatever it is, like, once it fully forms with someone, it fuses with them completely. Because for Kyle, he didn't want what happened to his life to happen to Joshua, because it's like, your situation is going to be the same thing as mine. Like, his life was horrible, like having a parent infected and stuff like that with this thing. And it's just kind of like, there's no fixing his mom, but we do see that the sheriff is keeping an eye on her. So we'll see what that ends up turning out to be. What's also interesting too is that Anderson came across this kind of church, or rather grouping of people, because he followed this sign that was like, if you're lost, seeking, the beacon will be your guide. And so it seems like some kind of church group out in the woods, and one particular girl takes interest in him and is like, oh, what was the exact word she used? Went through a personal transformation, that they were in the darkness finding a light. Pretty much describes these things to a T, because it's like Kyle for them was the beacon, which I kind of wonder, is that what that's kind of like supposed to all be built around, kind of. So that's why I'm wondering, are those people who've gone through the transformation completely and they're just meeting up? Is that what that's referencing, or is that something else entirely? I feel like it's got to be related. Just the fact is, oh, the personal change kind of makes me wonder. But it's like, would you be all about having, well, they might not know about the whole Rev situation, because the Reverend's situation is kind of something Sydney's handling on his own, which once again, like, where the hell is he at during all of this? Like, what is he and Fire Chief's wife up to? I mean, I'm sure it's gathering more and more forces, but it's like, I mean, at the same time, it's like, how do you fight something like this? It seems like almost unwinnable, because you don't know where the enemy is, and if you don't get to them in a certain time frame, you can't help them at all. And just kind of like, you know, it's kind of like, because last season they try to justify it by being like, oh, this isn't a bad thing, it isn't something that should be feared, but the way they're going about it is kind of like sketchy and shady. So it's like, I think you should be afraid. So I don't know. You even have the Reverend getting himself, letting the sheriff arrest him about the whole situation with the body. Like I said, it's heavily implying that it's Aaron, but I mean, we don't know. That could easily be someone else that's in there. I feel like it is Aaron, just because it's like, well, and it'd be kind of messed up if it turned, I feel like it won't be Aaron, just because he wants to, you know, punish himself because he thought he was fighting a good fight, but it's just kind of like, no, it's like, oh, I thought God was giving me this mission and kind of sending me on my way, but it's like, no, but I just kind of got caught up in the devil's trap and stuff like that. Like, it's the devil that was kind of pushing me along. So I'm curious. We'll probably get the results in the next episode or whatever, trying to figure out like whose body it is, but I'm kind of leaning more towards it potentially not being Aaron, but there's still that good chunk of me, probably like 45%, that's kind of like, it is Aaron. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know whether, because that's definitely going to be interesting. I feel like they're not going to make it Aaron, like Aaron's just going to be off somewhere else. He might be off somewhere else with Sydney. So, well, like I said, in the long run, we'll see what happens. I'm very interested to see what the next episode has in store for us. Because I was also curious, like, what the Rev situation was going to be like in this season, because he felt so defeated last season. Even this one, he's like, I have no weapons. He's like, I don't know how to handle all this. But Kyle's like, you're the only one I can really rely on. Him and the chief are the only ones in this situation who know that can help him. And it's like, well, what do we do in this? Like I said, it seems like I don't know how you go about dealing with a situation like this, you know, especially with it turning his family upside down the way it has. Oh, yeah, I'm also forgetting the whole aspect of like, oh, yeah, his mom's also dying, too, because basically she was in a catatonic state for like 20 years, but she had a stroke. And now it's like she's starting to die. And it's like, you know, what's happening? Because let's not forget, his mom is connected to this in some shape or form, because Sydney said it last season, like, oh, that not realizing how hard you fought for him. So is that implying, you know, which even back then it's like, well, is that him implying that, like, because we know Kyle's from that world, so does that mean his mom's from that world? Could be what happened, like, could Kyle get what he has? Did it come from his mom? Maybe it came from his dad, and maybe like his mom has been trying to protect him from that side of his family for so long. Because whatever it is that's in Kyle, we know it's hereditary because he passed it on to Amber. Which it does, well, they can sense it out, but I don't know if it's outright come out that they know that Amber is like Kyle, like she's an outcast herself. But it's like, be fair, like Sydney hasn't been around Amber, so I don't know. That's what's kind of wondering, like floating in the back of my mind about what that's all about. Cause I feel like if it was if his mom was like him, I don't think he would be possessed. So I think it is just simply like his mom was trying to guard him, like. I guess because they have some kind of connection, like the moment that thing possessed his mom, it knew everything, and anyone, maybe they have that connection where they, like, at least whatever Sydney's case is, like, he seems like he's kind of top dog. Maybe he has that kind of power to kind of connect for him to come and know that ahead of time, or maybe, you know, whispers came back to him about that. I don't know. Like, that's just where my mind is on it. We'll have to wait and see. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and good